Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. W.F. Strong. I want to welcome you to this week's edition of Brownsville Matters. We have with us today in the studio Derek Rivera, who is a kind of renaissance man in the musical world. He's done everything. And recently he has joined a partner and opened a recording studio, Alley Recording Studio here in Brownsville, Texas. Welcome, Derek. Appreciate having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I didn't really know that we had a recording studio here in Brownsville. Normally you think of this as being something you see in obviously big cities. So how many recording studios do we have here?
Correct. Just from my knowledge, there's probably about maybe 3 or 4 here within the Brownsville area. Again, studios can be something as simple as somebody setting up a room in somebody's house, or as big a facility like ours. We are not only a recording studio, we are also a very new up-and-coming record label. So we go by Alley Records and Alley Recording Studio. So we kind of have our hand in both, being able to record, and then it's at the same time being able to do the production aspect of a record label. Everything from producing music, promoting, everything dealing with merchandising and the advertisement of our local artists. And that, to be honest with you, is the main goal in which we started. There's so much talent here in Brownsville and in the Valley in general, but mainly here in Brownsville. Growing up, you know, listening to lots of musicians, lots of venues and restaurants and places that had live music. I was brought into that world, and then of course with the ever popular Latin Jazz Fest, you know, I know that helped me kind of thrive in my career. But having that and knowing that there's so much talent here, we were wondering why Brownsville was not representing a lot of this local talent. So again, I am just a small link in a bigger chain. My partner, who is the founder and CEO of Alley Records and Alley Recording Studio, Lenny Veta. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today due to some work scheduling. But I'm here to represent the
studio.
Studio, correct.
Well, yeah, great. Thank you.
So, again, the main thing is to really promote local talent.
Does the talent come to you, or do you find them?
Right now, we're in the process of doing a little bit of both. We do have people that reach out to us via Facebook, Messenger, social medias, emails, through a lot of contacts, people that know Lenny Veta, you know, people that know myself. They'll reach out and say, hey, man, I've been seeing these posts on Facebook and so forth, and so do you have a recording studio? Who are you with? Who are you associated with? What's the record label you all are promoting? And so we're trying to put that information out there. From time to time, we do actually post that we are looking for new talent. And we've actually reached out to several groups within the area that some of us, you know, some of them reach back, and some, you know, they might be too busy and they're not really feeling this avenue at that time for their group, band, or a solo act. But yeah, we are always looking for new acts. So again, if people want to reach out to us, you know, they can look us up on Facebook or online. We have our website up and running, www.alleyrecordingstudio.com.
Yeah, excellent. So you might go, for instance, to a wedding and you hear a group you've never heard before and you say, these guys are good. And you might just go up and give them a card.
Correct. That's actually been my sole means of advertising right now. I've actually handed out several cards at a couple of venues, specifically, believe it or not, 2 separate quinceañeras I went to in the past couple months. One of them, a really good young band. We're actually in communications right now. Euros and the Drifters, nice young country band out of the Valley here, and same thing. We heard them at a dinner for a quinceañera my son was coming out in, and I went to go talk to him. Like, man, you guys sound great. I would love to, you know, work with y'all and produce you all. So they're in the process of getting things straightened out. Another group that I reached out to, Vaquero Cowboys. They're a great group, and same thing. It was a quinceañera. I was really impressed with their work and handed them a card.
Isn't that redundant? Vaquero cowboys?
Correct.
Cowboys.
Correct.
but they're obviously creating a name that that has cultural crossover, covering it all.
And those are just, again, two that I actually handed out cards to at an event like that. But there are so many different places. I'll myself and Lenny, we tend to call each other up, and we'll have a dinner meeting, which that normally means we're going to go have dinner out somewhere that has live music.
Oh.
And, we see a band on stage, whether it's at the Sprocket, Lucky Barrel, over at Longboards, at the Island, different places. And if we see potential, we go out there and hand over our information. Not only that, we've actually been part of the Lucky Barrel had a contest during the summer called the Lucky Idol. And so we were a part of that. Part of the winnings of whoever won would get a recording session for free from us and a chance to be produced and start a possible relationship. Same thing with the Broken Sprocket. They had Brownsville's Got Talent. We were a big part of that as well. We are always offering ourselves and our services to venues like that for up-and-coming musicians that have not been discovered yet. We're always looking for new talent.
So if I come to you and say I'm interested in recording my music, I'm a rapper, but you never heard me before. So do you let me try out in your studio to see if you like me?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. We always ask for any kind of references, such as maybe a YouTube video or some videos that they can upload, song, MP3, song links. Some people have their stuff out on different platforms that are already out there, and we do get a lot of that. We get at least 20 hits a day on our social media.
Oh, that's a lot. Yeah,
people that are, reaching out. Hey, I'm interested. I do hip hop, rap, country, rock, Tejano, conjunto. I mean, you name it. We are dabbling into every single genre, and we're prepared for all that.
But anyway, if I come to you,
correct.
Do I pay you for the session?
If you're going to record, yes.
Yes.
So there's a difference between an actual recording session or a tryout. If you are trying to get linked up with us as an artist under Alley Records, yeah, there's no fee for that. We want to see what you can do, whether again if it's through video or if you're coming in live, or we've actually had some invites. Hey, I'm interested, and I'm going to be performing at such and such place, venue, and so forth, and we go listen to them. But yeah, anybody can call and set up a schedule, set up an interview, and we can move on from there.
Well, the music industry has been through so incredible a revolution, a disruption, really, compared to what it used to be. It used to be, they'd go in and record, in the old days, just an LP, on vinyl, and then they would release that, and if they did well, they'd sell millions of copies. They'd have a 45 to represent, the top 2 songs on this album, and they got a lot of radio play. There's where the money came from. And today, I don't understand how they make money. I mean, you still could produce an album?
Yes, we still do that, but you are absolutely right. The music industry has changed so much. Anybody can actually produce themselves, record themselves from the comfort of their own home with a laptop and a little musical controller. Of course, there's limits to all that, but what we offer is a little bit of the old and the new. A band or an artist can come in, record and lay down their tracks, whether it's an EP, which is about 4 or 5 songs, or a whole LP or an album, which is about 8 to 12 songs. They can come in, do all that, and we offer a replication of physical CDs, as low as 100 all the way to 1,000, depending on the bulk that they want to carry. Because people out there still buy CDs, believe it or not. So that's part of it. And then the other part is that we're licensed and set up through our distribution for that music to be digital and put out on streaming platforms that are worldwide. Now, here in America, we have the basics, which is going to be Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and such things, about 5 or 6. But every continent, every country has specific streaming websites or services that they are more prone to. So there's certain streaming websites that hit more of South America, certain streaming sites that hit more of Europe or Asia and stuff like that. So we are on 20 plus different worldwide streaming platforms. So when you come to us and you record with us that is part of our package. Not only are you going to get the physical CD that you can hand out and sell on your own for your own merchandising, but your music is actually going to go worldwide to 20 plus different streaming platforms.
If they're on those platforms, how do you make money from those songs being on those platforms?
Well, not to get too much into detail, but of course the studio or the record label takes a small percentage, 10%, 15%, depending on what it is. But the artist always gets the majority of it. If anything, right now, a lot of the streaming platforms or digital e-commerce, as they call it, the songs are going for about 99 cents per download. So if someone's going to try to get it on iTunes, Amazon Music, and so forth, they can download it from there at 99 cents per song.
Okay, I got you. Well, it's a very interesting business model and probably a very challenging environment for you as a startup studio.
Correct. At this point, it's not about making money. It's not about trying to become rich off of this. Believe it or not, it goes back to the passion. Lenny and I believe very, very strongly on promoting local talent, and that's why, again, we have our day jobs, because this is what we're going to be making money off of this. We do it out of passion and love for the music. I will be sitting in the studio for 6 to 8 hours working on just a tone from a guitar, or trying to link up a conga or cowbell rhythm, on a song, or making sure that the strings on the keys are just right. And it's just a matter of a tedious, repetitive playing of music and singling out different sounds and different instruments. Again, those are things that people don't see behind the scenes as far as what's happening in the studio. We want to make sure that we produce the best sound possible. And so it does take a lot of work. And again, I'm not getting paid on the hour for some of those things. Again, it's just a love and passion for the music.
I can't imagine doing what you're doing, in the sense that I've done a good number of audiobooks, edited them, and I just have to worry about one channel. I can't imagine having to, 6 or 7 different sounds that have to be mixed.
I wish it was 6 or 7. Try 26, 27.
That's incredible. But I think it's a good time to talk about your background, which has prepared you to do this. A lot of people say, musicians particularly, are sensitive to the notion that people will say, oh my goodness, you've had such overnight success. And they say, yeah, a night that lasted 26 years, that there have been a lot of years of prep to have this overnight success. And but you started with music when you were very little.
Correct. I was brought up in a very musical family. Coming up in a Christian household, we went to church a lot, and I was involved a lot with the church choirs and praise and worship teams. On my mother's side, every single one of my aunts and uncles were musically inclined. Same thing on my dad. My dad, I grew up with my dad playing guitar, listening to him play guitar.
And what sort of music did he play?
My dad is very old school. He loves, believe it or not, his favorite band is Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh, well, he and I would get along, I tell you.
Yeah, he loves a lot of, all genres, all aspects of music. And believe it or not, in my journey through music, I actually got a chance to introduce my dad to Latin jazz. And that's one thing he always talks about. He says, man, before you started talking about Latin jazz, I didn't know what it was. We do have, of course, a Latin background, and there's certain entities and genres and styles that we were exposed to. But as far as the concept of fusing jazz with Latin rhythms was something completely new to him and my mom. But again, I grew up with gospel. I grew up with country music. Being down here from the valley, grew up with a lot of old school Tejano music.
But what instruments were you playing at that time?
When I was little, I would mess around with my dad's guitar when he'd let me. Of course, Dad's like, hey, be careful because this is an expensive instrument. But at a very young age, I was exposed to the guitar. My grandmother's house on my mom's side, grandma's house always had a piano, always. And every time I go visit, there I go with 2 little fingers, and I'm messing around with sounds and melodies and ideas that I would hear. Something as simple as Jingle Bells or Happy Birthday, these simple little things. But at a very young age, I just found myself attracted to rhythm, completely to rhythm. I have a bad habit of constantly tapping my foot, tapping my hands. It's just in me. You know, ever since I was a baby, they would say that on the high chair, you know, I'd be slapping on the table or the little platform there. And again, I was really attracted to rhythm. Going to church, my eyes were glued to the drummer and whatever he was doing. And my mom would always talk about band. You should get into band. And I never really understood that until I got to about 4th, 5th grade. And then, of course, we had auditions for 6th grade band. And I got to meet Mr. Ernie Cantu, who I actually give a lot of credit to as far as becoming the man that I am today. He was my first band director and percussion instructor. I've had a long relationship with him. You know, he recently retired from the school district. He's an amazing musician, director, you know, and mentor.
So was this a marching band that you were part of?
This was a middle school band. Well, elementary band. Back then, 6th grade was part of elementary. So I joined the band, and you know, for percussion. And funny story, you know, we were told, okay, everybody come in and sign up for 2 instruments. And I understand that now as an adult and as an educator, you need to balance things out, because then everybody's going to go for that one instrument.
Sure.
And so I went in there and you know, like the you know, smart punk that I am, I went in and I put drums and drums. Not even knew what the word percussion is. Yeah, I just put drums and drums. And you know, I remember Mr. Cantu kind of getting upset about that. And hey, don't you understand? I told you, put down 2 instruments. I'm like, I'm only here for one thing. You know, and again, funny story. He wasn't too happy about that, and I said, you know what, that's fine. I ended up walking back to the office of the school, and my mother actually worked in the office, and she marched over there, and she's like, hey, I need to talk to you, Mr. Cantu. My son, you know, wants to do drums, percussion, you know, and he doesn't want to do anything else, you know, and so he's like, yeah, that's fine, but we're gonna have to audition him. And sure enough, we had an audition, and he was kind of floored, and he's like, okay, I get it. Drums it is. You know, my mother was always a big advocate for me growing up. And again, joining the 6th grade band actually helped me. We started out with 5 percussionists. At the very end of the year, it was only me. You know, everybody started to quit because they didn't have the discipline that was needed to understand the music, to practice, to go home and be repetitive and try to gain, you know, technique. And that's just something that I guess came naturally for me.
But was this drumming? Was this out on the field like a drum line, or was this inside where you're doing?
In 6th grade, it was inside.
Inside,
correct.
Okay.
And it was just the snare drum, understanding the rudiments and techniques of the snare drum.
So what sort of music were you accompanying at this time?
This was going to be your basic elementary classical music that's done at that level. Now, graduating on and going into middle school, that's where the band program really started to take off. You had your classical, you know, type of music that was used for competitions and UIL, right. But then we also had the fun times of going out and playing marching music when we had the Christmas parade here in Brownsville, and of course the Charo Days parade that we loved. And I got into the whole drumline aspect because it's a different set of instruments. So that's where I fell in love with playing drumline cadences. I still remember those cadences from my middle school, and I actually got a chance to rewrite them and use them for some of the schools that I taught at. That's where it just really opened my mind. Now, again, in middle school, I still had Mr. Cantu, and he actually introduced me to his younger brother, Jimmy Cantu, who's another very well-known drummer. I give him a lot of credit. He's one of my mentors, a good friend of mine, really good friend of mine. And musically, we just click. When he's on the drum set and I'm on the Latin percussion setups, I mean, we're cut from the same cloth, and we're able to read each other and play very, very, very well, rhythmically tight, you know. But I got to meet Jimmy at a very young age, and Mr. Ernie Cantu, you know, said, hey, this is my little brother. He's an amazing drummer. You know, he got to come and play for us in the middle school, and I was inspired. I told myself I want to be like that guy someday, and, you know, and I'm still trying to be. I'm still trying to be like him. But again, I was exposed to a lot at that age in middle school, and just starting to round out my sound. I started to fall in love with Latin percussion, which I would see in different aspects, whether it was you know, at a local restaurant, you know, a live band playing, or on the parades. I would always check out other bands or groups, especially people that were on different floats, and they had like a live band playing, whether it was tropical, tejano, different types of salsa music. I started to develop a real love for the rhythmical aspect of music. So any kind of worldly music, whether it's Brazilian, African, Latin American, Caribbean, anything that has percussion in it, I really was drawn to it. You know, I had an issue with some of, the orchestral stuff, the classic stuff, because there wasn't a lot of those rhythmic instruments in it, and a lot of drummers will tell you, yeah, it's kind of boring. But I knew that was an avenue I had to go through to understand music overall. Understanding the different mallet and keyboard instruments, the timpanis. I mean, counting 120 measures rest before you actually ding a triangle. I mean, that was torture for most drummers. But
did you come across any style internationally that the first time you heard it, you said, that's incredibly different and so exciting?
Yes, actually, like I said, my parents were real big in exposing me to a lot of different types of music. My dad would love going and looking for these different types of Latin artists and music. Now, he didn't know what they were called or what the genres were, but he would just call it all tropical. I'm looking for tropical. I love the rhythm, and I was hearing these sounds and these rhythms in my head. I knew what they were, just didn't know what they were called. And then when I got to high school, I got the pleasure of meeting another great hometown hero by the name of Fausto Cuevas. Fausto Cuevas, born and raised here in Brownsville, Texas, graduated from Hanna. He's currently the percussionist for J-Lo. He's done some great stuff, with Mark Anthony, with Stevie Wonder, and so forth. I got to meet him for the first time. They brought him down as a guest clinician because of the fact that he was from here,
right,
from Brownsville. And we used to have this event called the Brownsville, or BISD, Evening of Percussion. It was a 2-day workshop and concert. So Friday, all the high schools, all the percussion students from high school would get out and go and do these workshops and clinics and then prepare for a concert, which was going to be the next day. Saturday, all day long, we're going through the clinics and workshops, and then eventually in the evening we had the concert. Now I got to meet Fausto and Paul Gonzalez, another hometown hero. Paul right now is over in California doing his thing. We're still friends on Facebook. Same thing with Fausto. Fausto and I, we chat from time to time. I'm a big time follower, and another great mentor, both Paul and Fausto. They really set the bar for a lot of percussionists in the late 90s here in Brownsville, seeing that, hey, somebody from Brownsville can actually make it, And when they came, they were teaching everybody these different rhythms of clave, cáscara, tumbao, which are all, again, percussion terms that are used in Latin music. And then we started to understand the different categories of Latin music, what was considered Afro-Cuban, what was considered the different styles of rumba, of mambo, the cha-cha, and then what we call modern-day salsa, and so forth. And understanding all the rhythms and the instrumentation that go for each one, and that's where my heart just really found its home. And those rhythms came natural to me because I was hearing those rhythms since I was a kid from a lot of random music that my parents would play. And so I started to educate myself in the history, in the styling, in the approach that every song should have. People think, oh, it's a cowbell, you got to put a cowbell in it. Well, if it was up to me, yes, I would. But no, every style requires its approach. Everybody has to understand the soul that comes with each genre of music.
You reminded me of that Saturday Night Live skit of More Cowbell.
Correct. I love it.
That's wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Now, with as you describe your school years, I was wondering if you did badly in other subjects because you were so focused on music. A lot of athletes, for instance, yes, they don't do well in school because they just love football and they live and breathe football and neglect everything else. So were you a bit like that?
Correct. I mean, now that I'm 40, I can actually say it and not get in trouble. But yeah, I actually, my best subjects, believe it or not, were history and English. To this day, they still are, because they pique an interest. But my worst subjects were always math and science. Believe it or not, we use quite a bit of math within music.
Sure.
But it's a formula that I feel is just so ingrained in me internally. I don't have to think about it, and it's a language, too. It's a universal language. But when it came to certain parts of, advanced math, your advanced algebra and so forth, it was beyond me. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't concentrate because in my head, I'm thinking of rhythms. When I was in school, I was constantly looking forward to after-school marching practice or jazz band practice or something. We also did a lot of stuff with the ROTC. I was involved with the ROTC using the drum line for some of their different ceremonies and stuff that they would do, needing a military drum line. And at a very early age in high school, I got into composition. I started writing out my own pieces. I'd come up with something on the piano, on the guitar, and in high school, I actually had that opportunity, not only to be in band and be a percussionist drummer, but at the school I went to, which was Lopez High School, back in the day, it was the Fine Arts Academy. So they offered guitar classes, they offered, choir classes, piano classes, theory, and I was able to get into those and really immerse myself in music overall, because I knew it was going to help me at some point.
When did you start playing with bands, where you were actually making money for playing?
Believe it or not, my first band was a high school group called Assaulted Peanuts. It is a hilarious name, and if some of my friends are going to be hearing this interview, they're going to be like, yeah, I remember that band. We were a bunch of guys from the school band. We were known as a ska band. A lot of people don't know what ska is, S-K-A. It's like a alternative punk rock band with horns in it. You got trombone, trumpet, and sax, and it's really up-tempo, and it was a lot of fun. It was real popular in the 90s. Very similar to kind of like a No Doubt, Gwen Stefani type of feel from the 90s, and actually that's how No Doubt started. They started off as a ska band until they became who they are later.
Would Chicago be that?
Actually, no. Chicago. I mean, they do have horns.
They do have horns.
But it's a different feel.
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of the guys from the band put this together, and they said, hey, we needed a drummer. Well, anything dealing with drum set, I was always the go-to guy. And so we put this band together. We played for our talent show. We won, blew everybody out the water because we were something different. Uh-huh. You had your rock bands and you had your Tejano bands, and that's all there was. And then here you have these guys, they're just completely wild and crazy, and even if you didn't like the music, the rhythm and the feeling just got you off your seat. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up winning the talent show. From that point on, we started getting called up to play at so-and-so's Sweet 16 or little private party and stuff like that. And of course the money was, like $5 a person? It was really cheap. And then, of course, at a very young age, some friends of mine, a good friend of mine, Richard de la Riva, he's a band director in Harlingen right now. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and we had stayed in contact. And when he was in college, he decided to create a little jazz quartet, and called me up and said, hey man, we need a drummer that can handle this type of stuff. And we started performing at a very young age. And then from there, same thing, another well-known name here in Brownsville, Charles Hearn. Charles Hearn discovered me and started asking me to play with different projects, and eventually I became part of his band at the time, which was known as Out of Sync. Great musicians, great memories. I started very young, and to this day when I play with him, he makes that joke. He's like, man, I've known this kid since he was 12, and here I am 40 now. And but yeah, I was called out, by him and started performing with Latin percussion in the band, and eventually floated over to drum set in the band. A lot of great musicians at that time. Of course, Charles Hearn, Noe Sanchez, trumpet player, Ani Tharp, our singer, Rudy Ruffleson. Of course, previous to that, Jimmy Cantu, Eric Huguenot, and JJ Peña were on there. Again, top-notch musicians. And Eric and JJ I'm still working with today. They're part of our core musicians for the studio. Mm-hmm. Amazing monster musicians.
They're core musicians for the studio, meaning that they sit in and fill out groups' sound.
Correct. Yes. Whenever we have an artist that's just maybe a songwriter or a vocalist and guitar player, vocalist and keyboard player, they have the idea of the song, mm-hmm. but they don't have all the instrumentation behind it. I see. So that's where we come in and say, you know what, we're going to bring in a bass player, a guitar player, and we do have other supplemental musicians of specialty skills. If we need a fiddle player, a steel guitar player, mm-hmm. violin, cello, orchestra, whatever, we have several people that we know within the area that we can call in to fill a specific style or specific instrumentation.
How big is your studio? The actual recording studio.
I'm terrible with dimensions, but what would this be mm-hmm. here?
This room would be about 500 square feet. Okay,
so our sound room, which is our where we have our console, our laptop, not laptops, I'm sorry, our screens, our monitors, our studio speakers, everything is roughly around the size of this room. Mm-hmm. So we have a huge desk with our console, with our board. We're running state-of-the-art Pro Tools in our studio, which is the leading standard in the industry. We have that set up, and then when you walk in to the actual studio, again, I'm terrible with with dimensions. I want to say it's maybe a 40 by 40 feet.
Right. That's big.
Yeah, it's
That's
pretty
really big.
Yeah, we got high ceilings, padded walls, everything is acoustically sound, carpets laid out in the different areas. We are fully equipped with a top-of-the-line DW performance drum kit. We have all LP percussion, gongas, bongos, timbales, all your noisemakers, shakers, bells, you name it. That's all there. We got a couple of guitar amps. We got several guitars within the studio.
So have you ever sat in to fill in the drum sound?
Correct. I've been on, and actually that's how we got started. I have known of Lenny Vera and the Naked Alley Band from way back in the 90s. I remember hearing the name, knowing the name, but I never knew who he was. And about a year ago, or early this year, Eric Huguenet, the guitar player, reached out after one of our gigs and said, "Hey man, we're working on some stuff in the studio, and we'd like for you to come and lay down some drum tracks and possibly some percussion tracks on it." So I said, "Okay, great. Where's this at?" "Oh, Alley Recording Studios." "What's that? I never heard of it." So went down there, did my thing. That's when I met Lenny.
Okay, and where is it exactly?
It's off of the. I'm terrible with roads. It's been a while. Not Alton Glore, but is that Hugh Emerson that continues on? Past Paredes? I believe that's Hugh Emerson, yeah. It's down in that direction. And then, of course, you got some other streets that wind in there. We don't necessarily publicize the exact location unless everything is good to go.
But you're out that way.
In that direction, correct. So, again, meeting Lenny and everything, we just clicked right away. And he's like, "Wow, man, you did great on that. How would you feel trying on this type of song?" Laid down some tracks on that. "Hey, you know what, Ken? How do you do on blues? And how do you do on rock? And how do you do on country? Hey, what kind of percussion can you add to this song?" Next thing you know, I kind of felt like a laboratory monkey, but I was actually excited to be used and allow my talent and my abilities to be used in all these different tracks. And next thing you know, we started talking. We hit it off, and Lenny said, "Hey, I want to take this to the next level," because at that point it was just a hobby. He built his new home, built a studio in the back, completely separate. So it's not just a little room or a garage. No, it's an actual studio in his property in the back. And he said, "I want to make a go of this. I really want to pull and push local talent from here and get them recorded, get them on a CD, and get them on streaming platforms worldwide, so that random lady in Korea that likes salsa is hearing one of our local artists, or that old man in Russia enjoying his coffee in the morning is checking out one of our country artists because that's what he likes." And
it is interesting how that happens these days because of the international reach.
Correct.
Who's the guy that he was out of Tennessee? I think he was a blues player, and he found that he had a massive following in South Africa.
Oh wow! Okay.
And he was shocked. He was kind of a nobody here, but they actually brought him into South Africa, and he was, I don't have any other term to use. He was a rock star over there, and he was shocked that he was so popular. So that's the beauty of the internet and the international appeal is you can find your bliss out there, or the people find you.
Correct. And so again, just chatting with Lenny, he said, "Hey, let's take this to the next level. What do you know about websites? What do you know about marketing? What do you know about this, that, and the other?" And pretty much he tapped me out, all my resources and all my abilities. So we created the website. We advanced the social media content that we had, and we're pushing everything from I'm creating content. I'm designing posters and flyers, and I mean, you name it, everything for the studio. We just became partners. He said, "Man, I need you at my right hand, and let's go with this." And so we took off. And
you never know. I mean, there was a little studio in Memphis, and a guy named Elvis walked in there one day, put them on the map, and they eventually sold the contract to a bigger studio that could do justice with him. But man, it was a great payday for them.
Yes, it is.
And bragging rights forever.
Correct.
We have just a couple more minutes to go, but I wanted to ask you, since you grew up in Southmost, and one of the things we always like to focus on here is the evolution of the city of Brownsville over the past 40 years or so. And you've been here all that time. Well, I know you were in the military for a while, so you came back. But isn't that right? You were in the military?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, but anyway, I just want to ask about your Southmost and your reflections about the changing of Southmost and Brownsville in your lifetime.
Yeah, it has changed quite a bit growing up on Southmost all the way to my college years. You know, I saw it develop quite a bit in my high school and college years, but then you know, finishing with college, starting my family, moving out to Harlingen, you know, and pretty much doing everything I've been doing within military and law enforcement. I rarely got a chance to come back and just cruise or travel or have my natural routes that I used to have. My weekends would consist of coming down to visit my parents or my in-laws every weekend, and it was just a straight shot coming down 77, exiting on East, and going into Southmost. So I never saw a lot of the changes on the Boca Chica area, the Ruben M. Torres area, the development all the way out towards the north. Alton Glore is crazy now.
Yeah.
But yeah, through the years, I started noticing a lot of these changes. People talk about parks, you know, or locations, and I'm like, where is that? Well, that's in Brownsville. I wasn't aware. A lot of things have changed, you know, for the better. One of the things that, I mean, kind of tying in with Brownsville, downtown, live music, and the Latin Jazz Fest, this is actually a conversation my dad and I would always have. We would love to see the downtown area blossom into a multicultural, you know, arts, music, live venue area, kind of like it's doing right now. But these are things that we thought about 20 years ago. You know, we even imagined them shutting down maybe Elizabeth Street, making it all cobblestone. It's a walking district. And you're going from bistro to coffee house, and you've got jazz and Latin music and rock and country. There's just so much that you can do. You can walk around and go into an art gallery and enjoy, you know, art, you know, food, arts and crafts, different things like that. And I know we've done it from time to time, especially with the Latin Jazz Fest. I know now they're doing the, I think it's called First Friday. My son actually got an opportunity to do that a couple times. My son has also been dabbling into music and percussion, and he's involved in a very unique martial art that requires music and percussion as a rhythm basis for their movement. And they've actually been asked to go downtown and show that off. And so we've seen how they're trying to bring out all these different, whether it's painters or arts and crafts people, food, music, different types of art, and trying to expose that here in Brownsville, which is really good to see that Brownsville's taking off in that area.
There's been a lot of talk about what you just mentioned, the idea of closing off a certain portion of downtown to make it a pedestrian area over, you know, 4 or 5 square blocks or something like that.
Correct.
It is an appealing idea.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see Brownsville head that way at some point.
Well, many cities have done it, and it's been a great success, so I don't see why it can't be done. I mean, if you look at that area in San Antonio right around the Alamo,
correct,
they've sealed off to major traffic. I think it's a little bit of traffic they let through there, but it's more or less a pedestrian area, so it's kind of a mall they've created in there. So, well, listen, thanks a lot for coming in, and good luck with your studio.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Promoting Brownsville.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this BSPA video. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you like what you see. And if you really like what you see, go ahead and go to our website, brosoperformingarts.org, and smash the donate button. And then we'll really like you too.